There is nothing quite like the specific, soul-crushing humiliation of standing in your own front yard, wearing socks with little pepperoni pizzas on them, while a police officer with a hand resting near his holster asks you to step away from the rocking chair. The blue and red lights were strobing against the vinyl siding of my house, creating a disco effect that really didn't match the vibe of a Tuesday afternoon. My coffee mug, which read, "I don't work here," was getting cold in my hand. I looked at the mug. I looked at the officer. I looked past the officer's shoulder to the manicured lawn across the street, where the architect of my misery stood. Brenda. She was standing there in a floral tracksuit that looked like a botanical garden had exploded on a mid-sized sedan. She was holding her phone up horizontally, filming, her other hand pointing an accusatory acrylic nail right at my chest. "He's doing it again!" Brenda shrieked. Her voice had the tonal quality of a fork in a garbage disposal. "Officer, look at his eyes. He's clearly intoxicated. He's loitering with intent." Officer Miller, I read the nameplate on his chest as he sighed the heaviest sigh I have ever heard a human being emit, turned back to me. He looked like a man who had joined the force to stop bank robbers and save lives, only to end up mediating disputes about shrubbery height and garbage bin placement. He looked tired. He looked like he needed a beer. Honestly, so did I. "Sir," Officer Miller said, his voice flat. "Do you live here?" "I own the house," I said. I pointed to the house with my coffee mug. "The mortgage company owns the soul of it, but I possess the deed. I pay the taxes. I painted that front door. It's midnight blue. It took 3 coats. And what were you doing on the porch just now?" "I was sitting," I said. "Sitting?" "Yes, in the rocking chair, the wooden one. I was reading a book." "What book?" "It's a thriller, The Silent Patient. It's pretty good. I was at the part where—" "He's lying!" Brenda yelled from across the street. She took 2 steps off her curb, but didn't dare cross the invisible property line, as if my lawn were made of lava. "He wasn't reading. He was staring. He was staring menacingly at the neighborhood children. He's watching the patterns. He's casing the block." I blinked. Brenda, the only thing I was watching was a squirrel trying to carry a bagel up a tree, and honestly, I was rooting for the squirrel. "Do not speak to me!" she screamed. "Officer, he's verbally assaulting me now. Add it to the report. Harassment, menacing, loitering." Officer Miller rubbed his temples. He turned to his partner, a younger guy named Officer Davies, who looked like he was barely out of the academy and was currently trying very hard not to laugh. "Davies, run his ID. Let's just get this over with." I reached into my back pocket, realized I was in gym shorts, and patted my front pockets. Nothing. "My wallet is inside, on the kitchen counter. Next to the invite for the block party, I definitely won't be attending now." "Can you go get it for me, sir?" Miller asked. "Can I go into my own house?" I asked, just to clarify the level of insanity we were operating on. "Am I allowed to enter the domicile? Or is that considered breaking and entering?" "Just get the ID, sir." I turned and walked up the 3 steps to my porch. My sanctuary. I had bought this place 6 months ago. It was a fixer-upper in a quiet, established neighborhood. That's realtor code for full of retirees with nothing to do but monitor the street with military-grade binoculars. I thought I was buying the American dream. Instead, I had bought a front-row ticket to the Brenda show. I grabbed my wallet and walked back out. Brenda was still filming. "He went inside," she narrated to her phone, presumably live streaming to her echo chamber of local busybodies. "He probably went to flush the drugs or hide the weapons. You see how he walks? That's the walk of a guilty man, a thug." I handed my license to Miller. "Officer, look at me. I'm a 30-year-old data analyst. I work from home. My biggest thrill in life is when an Excel spreadsheet formula works on the first try." Do I look like a thug? Miller looked at my pizza socks. Mr. Jason Bennett? That's me. Mr. Bennett, look, we got a call. We have to respond. The caller alleged a suspicious individual loitering on the premises for an extended period, displaying erratic behavior. I live here, I repeated, emphasizing the words slowly. You cannot loiter at your own residence. That is literally the definition of living. I was inhabiting my property. Is there a time limit on how long I can sit on my porch? Is there a meter I need to feed? There have been complaints about staring, Miller said, looking uncomfortable. I have eyes, I said. They are attached to my head. If I sit on the porch, they have to be pointed somewhere. Unless the HOA bylaws require me to gouge them out, I'm going to see things. I saw the mailman. I saw Mrs. Higgins walking her poodle. I saw that squirrel with the bagel. That is not surveillance. That is existence. He's got a setup, Brenda shouted. She had crept closer now, standing right at the edge of my driveway. He sits there for hours. It's unnatural. Normal people go to work. Why isn't he at work? He's clearly running a drug ring out of that porch. I smell it. I smell the marijuana. That's mulch, Brenda, I shouted back. I put down fresh mulch on Saturday. You literally watched me do it. You complained about the color of the bags. Likely story, she scoffed. Officer, I want him cited. There is a town ordinance against vagrancy and loitering that impedes public peace. His presence is impeding my peace. Officer Davies came back from the cruiser. License is clean, obviously. No warrants, no record. He's got a parking ticket from 2018 in downtown. A hardened criminal, I muttered. Lock me up. Miller handed me back my license. Look, Mr. Bennett, technically you aren't breaking any laws. Technically? I raised an eyebrow. I should hope, factually, I'm not breaking any laws either. But, Miller continued, lowering his voice so Brenda couldn't hear, you're upsetting the neighbors. And when the neighbors get upset, they call us. And when they call us, we have to come out here. And I really, really don't want to come out here again today. So can you maybe take it inside? Just for now? De-escalate the situation? I looked at Miller. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. I sympathized with him, I really did. But then I looked at Brenda. She was smirking. It was a tight, smug little purse of the lips that said, I won. I control this street. I snapped my fingers and the law arrived to chastise you. If I went inside now, it was over. If I retreated to my living room, she would own the porch. Next week, she'd decide I wasn't allowed to park in my driveway. The week after that, she'd decide my curtains were the wrong shade of white. This wasn't about the porch. This was about dominance. No, I said. Miller sighed. Sir? No, I said again, louder. I appreciate that you guys have a job to do, but I have a mortgage to pay, which I do every month. This is my property. I am not blasting music. I am not naked. I am not screaming profanities, though I am tempted. I am sitting. Sitting is not a crime. If she calls you again, that is harassment on her part, not mine. You can tell her to stop wasting police resources. I walked back up the steps, sat down in my rocking chair, picked up my lukewarm coffee, and stared directly at Brenda. Mr. Bennett, Miller started. Am I under arrest? I asked, taking a sip of the terrible coffee. No. Am I being detained? No. Then I am going to finish my chapter. I opened the book. I didn't read a single word. I just held it up. The cops stood there for a moment. Miller looked at Brenda, who was now vibrating with a frequency that could shatter glass. He's sitting back down, she screamed. Arrest him! Failure to comply! He's resisting! Ma'am, Miller said, turning to her. He is on his own property. He is allowed to sit there. Please stop calling 911 unless there is an emergency. This is an emergency! Brenda wailed. The moral fabric of this neighborhood is disintegrating. Have a good day, ma'am. Have a good day, Mr. Bennett. The officers walked back to their car. I watched them go. Brenda stood on the sidewalk, phone still recording, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She didn't leave immediately. She stood there for a full 3 minutes, filming me sitting. I gave her a little wave. A small, polite, neighborly wave. She hissed, actually hissed, like a cat, and stomped back across the street to her house. She slammed her front door so hard I felt the vibration through the pavement. I sat there for another hour. I didn't even want to be outside anymore. It was getting humid, and the bugs were starting to come out. But I couldn't move. I had to hold the line. When I finally went inside, I tossed the cold coffee in the sink and slumped against the counter. My heart was pounding. I hate confrontation. I'm a data guy. I like numbers. Numbers make sense. Numbers don't call the police on you for reading. But I knew this wasn't the end. Brenda was the type of person who had the non-emergency line on speed dial and the code enforcement officer's home number memorized. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. I didn't have to look far. I'm part of the Oak Creek Community Watch group. I joined mostly to see if anyone found lost dogs or to get recommendations for plumbers. But there it was, right at the top of the feed, posted 4 minutes ago. Brenda Miller posted a video. Title: Criminal Elements in Our Midst. Caption: Sad day for Oak Creek. Police were called to handle a vagrant individual loitering on a porch at 402 Maple Drive. Police did nothing. The liberal agenda has tied their hands. This individual was menacing me and casing the neighborhood. I fear for our children. He claims to live there, but has no respect for community standards. Watch out. Keep your doors locked. The video was shaky footage of me standing in my socks, looking confused, while the police lights flashed. It was framed perfectly to make it look like I was being interrogated for a double homicide, rather than asked about my rocking chair. The comments were already rolling in. Susan G. Oh my God, is that the blue house? I walk past there every day, so scary. Rick T. This is what happens when we let the neighborhood go. Property values are going to tank. Thanks a lot, 402. Linda P. He looks like he's on something. Look at his eyes, glassy, definitely drugs. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just being annoying. She was assassinating my character. She was painting a target on my back. I scrolled through the comments, my thumb hovering over the report button. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Brenda was the admin of the group. I put the phone down on the granite island. I looked out the kitchen window at her house across the street. The lights were on. I could see her silhouette moving past the window. She was probably on the phone, rallying the troops, calling the HOA board members, drafting letters. She wanted a war? She wanted to police my porch? Fine. If she didn't like me sitting on a simple wooden rocking chair, she was absolutely going to hate what came next. I opened my laptop. I wasn't going to retreat. I was going to expand. If I was going to be the porch loiterer, I needed a better porch. I needed a porch that was undeniable, a porch that was visible from space. I typed general contractors near me into Google. I needed someone who didn't care about noise, someone who could build fast and build big, someone who looked at an HOA handbook and saw toilet paper. I clicked on a link for Big Mike's decks and Renos. The website looked like it had been built in 2005, and the testimonial on the front page said, "Mike built my deck. It holds my hot tub and my mother-in-law. 5 stars." I dialed the number. "Big Mike speaking," a voice rumbled. It sounded like gravel tumbling inside a cement mixer. "Hi, Mike," I said, my voice steady. "I need a deck. A big one, front of the house. I want a pergola. I want built-in seating. I want it to take up the maximum allowable square footage permitted by the county zoning laws to within 1 inch of the limit." "Sounds like a party," Mike said. "When do you want to start?" tomorrow," I said. "And Mike? Do you have experience dealing with difficult neighbors?" Mike laughed. It was a loud, booming sound. "Son, difficult neighbors are why I charge extra. But for you, if it's a good story, I might do the headache part for free." "Oh, it's a story," I said, looking out the window at Brenda's house. "And it's only chapter 1. I hung up the phone. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anxiety of the police encounter was fading, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just going to live here. I was going to loiter. I was going to loiter so hard it would make her head spin. But first, I needed to make sure I was bulletproof. Brenda had mentioned the HOA. She had mentioned people she knew. She was playing a game of rules and regulations. I walked over to the fridge and grabbed a beer. I cracked it open and took a sip. "You want to play rules, Brenda?" I whispered to the empty kitchen. "Let's play." I didn't know it yet, but the porch was just the bait. The real trap was going to be much, much more expensive and much more satisfying. The next morning, the war began at 6:59 a.m. I was awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the clock to tick over. I knew the local noise ordinance by heart now. I had looked it up the night before while angrily eating popcorn. Construction could legally commence at 7 a.m. on weekdays, not 6:59, not 7:01, 7 o'clock sharp. At 6:58 a.m., a low rumble shook my window frames. It sounded like a tectonic plate shifting, or perhaps a dinosaur clearing its throat. I got out of bed and peeked through the blinds. A white Ford F-350, lifted so high you'd need a stepladder and a prayer to get into the cab, was idling in front of my house. The side of the truck read Big Mike's Decks in red block letters that looked like they had been punched into the metal. A trailer was attached to the back, piled high with pressure-treated lumber that smelled like chemical victory. At exactly 7 a.m., the driver's side door opened, and Big Mike stepped out. I had spoken to him on the phone, but seeing him in person was a different experience. Mike was about 6'4" and roughly the shape of a vending machine. He wore a neon yellow t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off, revealing arms that looked like they were made of braided steel cables. He had a beard that could hide a small bird, and he was wearing wraparound sunglasses despite the morning overcast. He didn't knock. He walked to the trailer, grabbed a circular saw, plugged it into a generator that hummed like a jet engine, and revved it. Ree! The sound tore through the quiet suburban morning like a scream. It was beautiful. I threw on a robe and went out to meet him. "Morning!" I shouted over the generator. Mike cut the power. The silence that followed was deafening. He looked me up and down, noting the robe and the slippers. "You Jason?" he asked. His voice sounded like gravel crunching under a boot. "I am. You made good time." "Time is money," Mike said. He gestured to the two other guys hopping out of the truck. One skinny guy with a mullet, and one older guy who was smoking a cigarette with intense focus. "That's Steve and Old Man River. Don't ask why we call him River. We don't know." "Great to meet you guys," I said. "So, about the plan." Mike walked up to the porch, stomped on a loose board, and grimaced. "Plan is simple. We rip this rotting toothpick structure out. We extend 12 feet that way, wrap around the corner. Cedar decking. Pergola on top with 4x4 posts. Big enough to land a helicopter. Sturdy enough to host a sumo wrestling tournament. That what you wanted?" "Exactly," I said. "But Mike, there's a catch." "There's always a catch." I pointed across the street. "See that house? The beige one with the lawn gnomes arranged in a phalanx formation?" "Yeah, that's Brenda. She is the enemy. She will try to stop you. She will measure things. She will quote bylaws you didn't know existed. She called the cops on me yesterday for sitting in that chair." Mike slowly turned his head toward Brenda's house. He adjusted his sunglasses. She called the cops for sitting? Yes. Mike spat on the ground, not on the grass, but respectfully on a patch of dirt. I hate people like that. My ex-wife was like that. She tried to tell me how to stack the dishwasher. You can't tell a man how to stack a dishwasher. It's an art form. He turned back to me. Don't you worry, Jason. I speak fluent Karen. Steve, get the demo hammers. The demolition began. And with it, the summoning ritual was complete. Within 4 minutes of the first hammer swing, Brenda's front door flew open. She marched out wearing a pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, hair in curlers, looking like a terrifying Easter bunny. She didn't come to me. She went straight for Mike. I stood by the front door, coffee in hand, watching the gladiators enter the arena. "Excuse me!" Brenda shrieked. "Excuse me!" Mike was ripping a plank off the deck with a crowbar. He didn't stop. Crack! "Hey, you!" Brenda yelled, waving her arms. Mike slowly lowered the crowbar. He turned to her. "Morning, ma'am. You're in a construction zone. Gonna need you to put on a hard hat or step back 10 feet. "It is 7:05 in the morning!" Brenda screamed. "People are trying to sleep. This is a residential neighborhood, not a shipyard. Shut that noise off immediately." "City Ordinance 45B," Mike said calmly, leaning on his crowbar like it was a cane. "Construction permitted between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. My watch says 7:06. I'm actually 6 minutes late to making noise. I owe the client some extra decibels." Brenda gaped at him. She wasn't used to people knowing the numbers better than she did. She rallied quickly. "Do you have a permit for this? You can't just expand a footprint without a variance. The HOA requires—" Mike pointed a massive finger toward my front window. "Permit number 2024, 899, taped to the glass. Approved by the City Planning Committee last Thursday. As for the HOA, state law says they can't override city zoning on structural safety repairs. This deck was a safety hazard. I'm saving lives here, ma'am." "Safety hazard?" Brenda scoffed. "It was fine yesterday." "Termites," Mike lied smoothly. "Invisible ones. Very dangerous. They eat wood. Then they move to human bone. You want to take that risk?" Brenda's face turned a shade of purple that clashed horribly with her pink robe. "I'm calling the board. I'm calling the city inspector. You are blocking the view of the street." "We're not blocking anything but your ability to spy on this man's breakfast," Mike rumbled. "Now, unless you want to grab a shovel, step off the job site. Liability, you know. If a nail hits you, that's a lot of paperwork I don't want to do." Brenda let out a sound of pure frustration, spun on her fuzzy slippers, and stormed back to her house. Mike looked at me and winked. "Termites," he whispered. "Works every time." I knew then that I would follow this man into battle anywhere. For the next 3 days, my house was a symphony of chaos, and I loved every second of it. Big Mike and his crew were efficient, loud, and delightfully petty. When they used the saw, they angled the dust chute so the wind carried the sawdust gently toward Brenda's pristine driveway. When they took lunch breaks, they sat on the tailgate of the truck, facing her house, eating meatball subs and laughing boisterously. I worked from my dining room table, watching the show. But Brenda wasn't idle. Oh no, she was mobilizing. On Wednesday, the mailman dropped off a letter. It was a thick, creamy envelope with the Oak Creek HOA crest embossed on it. I opened it. Notice of violation. Recipient, Jason Bennett. 402 Maple Drive. Violation 1. Unauthorized modification of exterior aesthetic. Section 4.2. Violation 2. Excessive noise, nuisance. Section 5.1. Violation 3. Loitering. Section NA, handwritten in red ink. Fine. $500 immediately, plus $50/day until construction ceases. I walked outside and handed the letter to Mike. He wiped his hands on his jeans and read it. "Visual nuisance," Mike read aloud. He looked at the beautiful cedar posts he had just installed. "This is craftsmanship. This is art. She calls this a nuisance. Her face is a visual nuisance." "What do I do?" I asked. "They can put a lien on my house." "Pay the fine for now," Mike advised. "Keep the receipt, then fight it at the next meeting. But this?" He tapped the paper. "This means we're getting under her skin. She's throwing paper because she can't throw punches. We escalate." "Escalate how?" "The pergola," Mike said, his eyes gleaming. "You wanted it shaded, right? How about we use those angled slats, the ones that block the view from the street but let you see out? It's called a privacy screen. It's perfectly legal, but it'll drive her nuts because she won't be able to see if you're on the porch or not. The mystery will kill her." "Do it," I said. "Build the wall." The climax of the construction phase happened on Friday. The deck was nearly done. It was magnificent. A sprawling platform of cedar, smelling of rich wood and defiance. Mike and his crew were packing up for the day. The massive F-350 was parked on the street, right in front of my house. Because the trailer was attached, the rig was long. The back wheels of the trailer were maybe 2 feet past the edge of my driveway, encroaching into the public space of the curb. I was outside signing a check for the materials when a police cruiser rolled up. Not a patrol car this time, but a sleek, menacing traffic enforcement interceptor. Brenda was already on her lawn. She wasn't in a robe this time. She was in her full "let me speak to the manager" uniform. Khaki capris, a sensible blouse, and sunglasses big enough to weld in. She was pointing at Mike's truck. The officer, a guy with a thick mustache and zero sense of humor, stepped out. "Owner of this vehicle?" he barked, pointing at the truck. "That's me," Mike said, stepping forward. He towered over the officer, but he kept his hands visible. Mike knew the drill. "You're blocking the flow of traffic," the officer said, "and you're parked more than 12 inches from the curb. I've got a complaint here saying this vehicle has been abandoned for 3 days. "Abandoned?" Mike laughed. "I've been moving it every night, and look at the tape." Mike pulled a tape measure from his belt. He was like a gunslinger with that thing. He snapped it down to the pavement. 10 inches from the curb. Legal limit is 12. I'm within spec. "The trailer hitch!" Brenda shouted from the sidewalk. "The hitch is sticking out into the lane. It's a hazard. A fire truck couldn't get through. If my house burns down, it's his blood on the hands." The officer looked at the hitch. It was sticking out maybe 4 inches. "It's a violation," the officer said, pulling out his ticket book. "Obstruction of roadway. And since it's a commercial vehicle in a residential zone overnight." "I didn't park it overnight," Mike argued. "I just told you." "I have a witness statement saying it's been here since Tuesday," the officer said, gesturing to Brenda. Brenda smirked. It was a cold, reptilian smile. She had lied. She had filed a false report just to get him ticketed. "That's a lie," I jumped in. "I have security footage. I can prove the truck leaves every day at 5 p.m. "You can contest it in court," the officer said, already writing. He ripped the ticket off and slapped it on Mike's windshield. "Move it now, or I call a tow." Mike looked at the ticket. He looked at Brenda. His face went red, then strangely calm. He didn't yell. He didn't throw the ticket. He just folded it neatly and put it in his pocket. The officer drove away. Brenda stood there, arms crossed, looking like she had just won the Super Bowl. "Sorry about that, Mike," I said, feeling sick. "I'll pay the ticket." "Keep your money," Mike said. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "It's the principle." He started packing up the tools in silence. He threw the circular saw into the truck bed with a little more force than necessary. "You know," Mike said, not looking at me, "I've been doing this 20 years. Contractors, we see everything. We go into people's backyards, their basements, their lives. Yeah. And one thing I've learned, the people who scream the loudest about the rules, the ones who watch everyone else like a hawk. He turned to me, lowering his sunglasses. They're always the ones hiding the biggest pile of dirt. Nobody is that paranoid unless they're afraid of getting caught. I looked across the street at Brenda. She was inspecting her lawn for invisible weeds, pretending not to watch us. She's hiding something, Mike said. I'd bet my left nut on it. Someone who lies to a cop about a truck parking? That comes easy to her. That's muscle memory. She's done it before. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. Muscle memory. Brenda acted like she owned the law. She wielded police officers like personal security guards. But Mike was right. That level of comfort with manipulation, that sheer audacity to lie on an official report. That wasn't a hobby. That was a lifestyle. Skeletons, I whispered. Closets full of them, Mike grunted. He climbed into his truck. I'll be back Monday to finish the stain. You watch your back, Jason. She's feeling bold now. Mike drove off, the trailer rattling behind him. I stood on my half-finished, magnificent deck. The ticket incident had been the last straw. I had tried to be nice. I had tried to ignore her. I had tried to just build a deck and live my life, but she had come from my contractor. She had cost a working man money based on a lie. This wasn't a neighbor dispute anymore. This was a crusade. I went inside and opened my laptop. I didn't search for HOA lawyers or mediation services. I remembered a guy my cousin had used during a nasty divorce. A guy who didn't have a LinkedIn profile. A guy whose office was rumored to be behind a vape shop in the sketchy part of town. I typed in the name I remembered. Sal Moretti, Private Investigations. The website was a single page, black background, white text. It said, "Need to know? I find out." I dialed the number. "Moretti," a voice answered. It sounded like whiskey and cigarette smoke filtered through a rusty screen door. "Mr. Moretti," I said, watching Brenda through my blinds. "My name is Jason Bennett. I have a neighbor problem." "Kid," Sal sighed, "I don't do cat rescues." "She's not a cat," I said. "She's a tyrant. She's filing false police reports. She's fining me for existing. And my contractor thinks she's hiding something big." There was a pause on the line. Then the sound of a lighter flicking and a long inhale. "A suburban tyrant, huh?" Sal asked. "HOA type?" "The president of the board." "I hate those people," Sal said. The tone of his voice changed. He sounded interested. "They act like they're running the mob, but without the style. You want me to dig?" "I want you to dig to China," I said. "I want to know where she went to high school. I want to know why she moved here. I want to know what she's afraid of." "This gonna cost you," Sal warned. "Data isn't free, and neither is my gas." "I'll pay double if you find dirt," I said. "Meet me in an hour," Sal said. "Strip mall on 4th and Main. Look for the sign that says Vape Nation. I'm the door to the left. Bring cash." I hung up the phone. My heart was racing, but it wasn't fear this time. It was adrenaline. Brenda was outside again, sweeping her driveway. She looked up, saw me in the window, and gave me a smug little nod. A nod that said, "I win." I nodded back. "Not yet, Brenda," I thought. "Not yet." I grabbed my keys and my checkbook. I had a date with a shark. The strip mall on 4th and Main was the kind of place where dreams went to die, or at least to get heavily discounted. It housed a laundromat with a flickering O in its neon sign, a payday loan shark that was legally distinct from a robbery, and Vape Nation, which smelled like cotton candy and questionable life choices even from the parking lot. To the left of the vape shop was a plain steel door with no handle, just a keypad and a piece of paper taped to it that read, Knock loud. Bell is broken. I knocked loud. Nothing happened for a solid minute. Then, a buzzer sounded, harsh and angry, and the lock clicked. I pushed the door open and stepped into a hallway that smelled of stale coffee and old carpet. At the end of the hall was a frosted glass door with the words S. Moretti, Investigations stenciled in black. The I in Investigations was peeling off. I opened the door and walked into a scene from a black and white movie that had been colorized by a budget studio. The blinds were drawn, slicing the afternoon sun into dusty strips across a desk cluttered with file folders, takeout containers, and an ashtray overflowing with cigar butts. Behind the desk sat Sal. Sal the shark. Moretti looked less like a shark and more like a walrus that had seen too much. He was a large man, wearing a rumpled button-down shirt that was straining against the laws of physics at the buttons. He had slicked-back gray hair, dark circles under his eyes, and he was currently trying to fish a pickle out of a jar with a letter opener. "You the Porch guy?" he asked without looking up. "I am," I said, closing the door behind me. "Jason Bennett." "Have a seat," Sal grunted. He finally stabbed the pickle, popped it into his mouth, and crunched loudly. "Don't mind the mess. The cleaning lady quit. Said the aura in here was heavy. Can you believe that? Heavy aura. I pay her to dust, not to read my chakras." I sat in the guest chair. One of the legs was shorter than the others, so I had to balance carefully to avoid tipping over. "Thanks for seeing me on short notice, Mr. Moretti." "Sal, Mr. Moretti was my father. He was a bookie. I'm a legitimate businessman." He wiped his hands on a napkin that already had a coffee stain on it. "So, you said on the phone you got a neighbor problem. Usually I don't touch domestic squabbles. It's messy. People get emotional over property lines. But you said the magic words." "What were the magic words?" "False police report," Sal said. He leaned back, the chair groaning in protest. "I hate people who weaponize the badge. It makes the real work harder, so tell me. Who is she? What's the damage?" I took a deep breath and laid it all out. I told him about the rocking chair incident, the accusation of loitering on my own property, the photos posted to the Facebook group, the letter from the HOA, the incident with Big Mike, and the parking ticket. When I got to the part where she claimed I was casing the neighborhood by reading a book, Sal started to chuckle. It started low in his chest, a dry, wheezing sound, and then erupted into a full-blown guffaw. He laughed so hard he started coughing. He slammed a fist on the desk, rattling the pickle jar. "She said you were loitering?" he wheezed, wiping a tear from his eye. "In your own house? Kid, that's rich. That's classic. These suburban queens, they think they own the air you breathe." "It's not funny to me," I said, though his laughter was weirdly validating. "She's costing me money. She's threatening my contractor. I want to know who I'm dealing with." Sal sobered up instantly. The humor vanished from his eyes, replaced by a sharp, predatory intelligence. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "You're dealing with a control freak," Sal said. "And control freaks are usually trying to control their environment because they can't control their past. You said she's the HOA president?" "Yes, self-appointed, I think." "Figures. Power trips on small hills." Sal pulled a yellow legal pad toward him and uncapped a cheap ballpoint pen. "All right. Give me everything you got. Name, address, license plate if you have it. Does she have a husband, kids, a job?" "Brenda Miller," I said. 405 Maple Drive. She drives a silver Honda Odyssey, late model. Plate number, I wrote it down. I pulled a sticky note from my pocket. KZN, 449, no husband that I've seen. There's a rumor she's divorced, but nobody knows for sure. No kids living there, but she talks about protecting the children constantly. She doesn't seem to work, or if she does, it's from home. She's always there. Sal scribbled furiously. Always there, that's good. That means she's bored. Bored people make mistakes. Maiden name? I don't know. We'll find it. How old, roughly? Late 40s, early 50s? Hard to tell with the Botox. Sal nodded. All right. Here's the play. I'm gonna run a skip trace, deep dive. I'll cross-reference her name with property records in every state. I'll check civil courts, criminal courts, traffic violations. If she's got a secret, I'll find it. I'll even check her trash if I have to, though I charge extra for biohazard retrieval. Please don't go through her trash, I said quickly. I don't want to be arrested for stalking. I don't get arrested, kid. I get results. Sal ripped the page off the notepad. But listen to me. This takes time. A few days, maybe a week. If she's clean, she's clean. Sometimes a Karen is just a Karen. You prepared for that? I am, I said. But my contractor... He had a gut feeling. He said she lies too easily. Like it's muscle memory. Sal paused. He looked at me over the top of his glasses. Contractors know people. If a guy who builds houses says the foundation is rotten, you listen. I'll dig deep. 2,000. Half now, half when I hand you the file. It was a lot of money. It was my vacation fund. But I thought about Brenda's smug face as the cop wrote that ticket. Deal, I said. I counted out $100 bills and placed them on the desk. Sal swept the money into a drawer faster than a magician. Go home. Act normal. Don't antagonize her. Let her think she's winning. Complacency makes people sloppy. Hard to act normal when she watches my every move, I muttered. Then give her a show, Sal grinned, revealing a gold tooth I hadn't noticed before. Just make sure it's the show you want her to see. I drove home feeling lighter. I had an ally. I had a secret weapon named Sal operating in the shadows. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was setting. The construction crew was gone, but the progress was staggering. The deck was finished, and it was glorious. Big Mike hadn't just built a deck, he had built a fortress. The cedar planks were smooth and stained a rich, warm honey color. The pergola rose overhead like a temple to leisure, the thick beams casting long, geometric shadows. But the pièce de résistance was the privacy screen. On the side facing Brenda's house, Mike had installed a slat wall. Horizontal boards, angled slightly downward like louvers. From the inside, sitting down, I could see out through the gaps. I could see the street, the trees, and yes, Brenda's house. But from the street? It was a wall of wood, a beautiful, impenetrable barrier. She wouldn't be able to tell if I was there or not. She wouldn't know if I was reading, drinking, or building a nuclear reactor. I walked up the new steps, the wood solid under my feet. I sat in my rocking chair behind the screen. It was perfect. I felt like a sniper in a blind. My phone buzzed, a text from Big Mike. Mike, how's the view? Me, incredible. I feel invisible. Mike, good. I'm coming by tomorrow to install the lighting package, also known as the caught you red-handed package. The next day, Saturday, Mike arrived without the big crew. He came in a regular pickup truck, carrying a toolbox and several boxes marked with the logo of a high-end security company. These aren't just lights, are they? I asked, as he unpacked sleek black dome cameras. Oh, they're lights, Mike said, holding up a fixture that looked like a modern lantern. Motion-activated, solar-powered. Very eco-friendly. But, he flipped it over, revealing a tiny lens embedded in the base. They also happen to record in 4K resolution with audio, night vision, and cloud backup. I use them on job sites to catch people stealing copper wire. Is this legal? Recording your own property, absolutely. If the camera accidentally captures the sidewalk and the street because of the wide-angle lens, well, that's just technology being helpful. We spent the morning installing them. One on the corner of the pergola facing the driveway, one by the front door, and one strategically placed right in the center of the privacy screen, peeking through a gap in the slats. That one had a direct line of sight to the edge of my lawn, where Brenda liked to stand and scream. "She's gonna hate these," I said, handing Mike a screwdriver. "She won't know they're cameras," Mike said. "They look like fancy sconces. By the time she figures it out, we'll have everything we need." By noon, we were done. The trap was set. Now we just needed the bait. "We need to test the system," Mike said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "And we need to see if the privacy screen works. I say we have a little party." "A party?" I hesitated. "I don't want to get hit with a noise violation." "Not a loud party," Mike corrected. "A visual party. We sit on the porch. We drink iced tea. We laugh. We point at things. We make it look like we're having the time of our lives. If she can't see what we're doing, but she can hear us having fun, it'll drive her insane." "Psychological warfare," I said. "I like it." I went inside and made a pitcher of iced tea. I put it on a tray with 2 glasses. I even cut up some lemon wedges to make it look fancy. We sat on the new deck, hidden behind the slats. From the street, we were just shadows and voices. "So," Mike said, leaning back in the new patio furniture I had assembled, "you talked to the PI?" "Yeah, he's on it. He thinks you're right about the skeletons." "Good." Mike took a sip of tea. "This is good tea, by the way." "Thanks. It's Earl Grey." "Fancy." We sat there for 10 minutes, just chatting about baseball and the cost of lumber. Then, inevitably, the curtain twitched across the street. "Target acquired," Mike murmured, not moving his lips. "She's at the window." "I see her," I said. Through the slats, I could see the blinds separate. "Laugh," Mike whispered. "Laugh like I just told you the funniest joke in the world." I threw my head back and laughed. "Ha ha ha, oh Mike, that's hilarious." Mike joined in, his booming baritone echoing off the pergola. And then the guy says, "That's not a hammer." We were improvising nonsense, but the effect was immediate. The front door across the street opened. Brenda stepped out. She was wearing her patrol outfit again. Visor, sunglasses, clipboard. She walked to the edge of her driveway and stared at my house. She craned her neck. She took a step left. She took a step right. She was trying to see through the slats. "She can't see us," Mike whispered, grinning. "It's killing her." "She's getting closer," I reported. Brenda walked to the edge of the street. She was squinting. She pulled out her phone. She tried to take a picture, but all she would get was a picture of a nice wooden wall. "Time for phase 2, Mike said. "The toast." "To the new deck!" Mike shouted, raising his glass of iced tea so it was visible above the privacy screen for just a second. "To the deck!" I shouted back. Brenda flinched. She looked furious. She couldn't verify if we were drinking alcohol. She couldn't verify if we were loitering or working. She had no data. She stood there for a solid 5 minutes, just staring. Then, she marched up to the edge of my lawn. "Hey!" she shouted. "Hey!" I stayed silent. Mike put a finger to his lips. "I know you're in there," Brenda yelled. "I can hear you. You need a permit for a gathering of more than 10 people. "There's 2 of us," I whispered to Mike. "Ignore her," Mike whispered back. "I'm calling the code enforcer," she screamed. "That wall is too high. It exceeds the visual variance." Mike leaned over to me. "It's exactly 6 feet. Standard fence height. Totally legal." We didn't answer. We just clinked our glasses together. Clink. The sound drove her over the edge. She took a step onto my grass. Then another. She was now fully on my property, marching toward the deck, phone raised like a weapon. "Smile," Mike whispered. "You're on camera." The little black lantern on the post blinked once, imperceptibly. Brenda marched right up to the privacy screen and tried to peer through the crack. "What are you doing in there?" she hissed. "Drinking tea, Brenda," I said calmly, not standing up. "Would you like some?" She jumped back, startled by how close my voice was. You are provoking me. This structure is an eyesore. It's aggressive." "It's wood," I said. "It's inanimate. Please get off my lawn." "I have a right to inspect potential code violations," she claimed, which was absolutely not true. "You are trespassing," I said, "and you are being recorded." "Recorded?" She looked around wildly. She looked at the lanterns. She didn't clock them as cameras. "You're bluffing. You're a menace." She kicked, actually kicked, one of the new planters I had put at the base of the stairs. It tipped over, spilling dirt onto the walkway. "That," Mike said, his voice low and hard, "was property damage." Brenda realized she might have crossed a line. She froze, looked at the spilled dirt, then looked at the wooden wall. She huffed, straightened her visor, and turned around. "I'll have this torn down by Monday," she shouted over her shoulder as she retreated. We watched her go. Mike looked at me. "Did we get it?" I pulled up the app on my phone. I rewound the footage. There it was, in crisp 4K definition. Brenda walking onto the property. Brenda screaming. Brenda kicking the planter. "We got it," I said. "Trespassing and destruction of property. It's minor, but it's leverage." "Save that video," Mike said. "Back it up to 3 different clouds." Done! We spent the rest of the afternoon in peace. But the real bomb dropped on Monday morning. I was working at my desk when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Bennett?" The voice was raspy. "Sal." "Sal, did you find something?" "Find something." Sal let out a short, sharp bark of laughter. "Kid, you better sit down. Are you sitting?" "I'm sitting." "Good. Because I didn't just find dirt. I found an archaeological dig site." My stomach did a flip. "What is it?" "Not over the phone," Sal said. "This is too good. Meet me at the diner on 3rd, the one with the greasy spoon. 20 minutes?" "I'm on my way." I grabbed my keys. I texted Mike. "It's happening." I drove to the diner faster than I probably should have. Sal was already there, sitting in a booth in the back, nursing a cup of black coffee and a slice of cherry pie. He had a manila folder next to him. A thick one. I slid into the booth opposite him. "Tell me." Sal took a slow bite of pie. He chewed deliberately. He was enjoying the dramatic tension. "So," Sal said, wiping crumbs from his lip, "your friend Brenda, or should I say Brenda Kowalski." "Kowalski?" "Her maiden name. Or at least the name she used in Ohio about 10 years ago." Sal tapped the folder. "She moved here 5 years ago, right?" "Yeah, that sounds right." "And she's been a model citizen ever since. A pillar of the community." Sal smirked. "But back in Ohio, Brenda was a busy girl." He opened the folder and slid a stack of papers toward me. They were photocopies of court dockets, mugshots, police reports. I looked at the top photo. It was definitely her. Younger, less Botox, hair a little wilder, but the eyes were the same. The eyes of someone who wanted to speak to the manager of the universe. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "You are looking at 3 outstanding bench warrants," Sal whispered. "Warrants? Like arrest warrants?" "Active ones," Sal nodded. "She skipped town, never showed up for court, and because they were misdemeanors, nobody came looking for her across state lines. But they never go away, kid. They just sit in the system waiting for someone like me to run a national check." "What did she do?" I scanned the papers. The charges were listed in bold. "Read 'em and weep," Sal said. I read the first one. Illegal dumping. Illegal dumping? I asked. She was throwing her household trash into a construction dumpster behind a strip mall to save on pickup fees, Sal explained. Got caught, refused to pay the fine, fought the cop who wrote the ticket. I read the second one. Disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace. That one, Sal pointed, was at a coffee shop. Apparently, the foam on her cappuccino was insufficient. She threw the cup at the barista, screamed for 20 minutes, resisted arrest when the cops showed up. That sounds about right, I muttered. And the third one, Sal said, is the kicker, leaving the scene of an accident, property damage. A hit and run? Fender bender in a parking lot. She backed into someone, got out, looked at the damage, got back in her car, and drove off. Witnesses got the plate. She never showed up for the court date. Sal leaned back. She's a fugitive, Jason. Technically. A petty, low-stakes fugitive. But here's the thing about active warrants. If the local cops here find out about them, and if the jurisdiction in Ohio confirms they still want her, they have to pick her up. I stared at the file. This was it. This was the nuclear option. So she's been terrorizing the neighborhood about rules and regulations, while dodging the law herself, Sal finished. Hypocrisy at its finest. What do I do? I asked. Do I just call the cops? No, Sal shook his head. If you just call and say check her record, they might prioritize it. They might not. It's out-of-state paperwork. Cops hate paperwork. You need a reason for them to run her ID right now. You need an active situation. I thought about the porch warming plan. I thought about the camera footage. I thought about the lemonade. I have an idea, I said. A slow smile spread across my face. I like that look, Sal said. That's the look of a guy who's about to win. She hates my porch, I said. She hates me sitting on it. If I do something she considers a commercial enterprise, she'll lose her mind. She'll call the cops on me. And when they show up, Sal gestured to the folder. I hand them this, I finished. Bingo, Sal said. You entrap her with her own rage. I closed the folder. It felt heavy. It felt like justice. Thanks, Sal. You're a genius. I know, Sal said. Now pay me the rest of my money. I got a cat rescue lady calling me about a missing Persian. I paid him. I took the file. I walked out of the diner into the bright sunlight. The war was almost over, and Brenda had supplied all the ammunition. The file sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded gun. It was a standard manila folder, slightly dog-eared at the corner, with the words Confidential Kowalski scrawled in Sharpie on the tab. Inside were 10 pages of paper that had cost me $2,000 and a significant amount of emotional bandwidth. You ready for this? Big Mike asked. He was standing in my kitchen, eating a bagel he had brought with him. He looked like a bear that had wandered into a pottery barn. I'm ready, I said, but we have to do this exactly right. Sal said she has to be the one to call the cops. If I call them and say, hey, arrest my neighbor, they might file a report and get to it next week. If she calls them screaming about an emergency, they show up now. So we need to trigger a code red meltdown, Mike noted, chewing thoughtfully. We need something that violates her spiritual sense of order. Exactly. We need a lemonade stand. Mike stopped chewing. A lemonade stand? Think about it. It's the ultimate suburban trigger. It implies commerce. It implies unpermitted food service. It implies joy. She hates all three. You're a diabolical man, Jason, Mike grinned. I'll get the card table. We spent the next 20 minutes setting the stage. This wasn't just a folding table on the lawn. This was a piece of performance art. We draped a checkered tablecloth over the table. We set out a massive glass pitcher filled with ice, lemons, and sparkling water. We added a stack of red Solo cups, But the coup de grace was the sign. I had printed it on 11x17 cardstock. In a bold, cheerful font, it read, "Neighborhood Refreshment Station, complimentary for all Oak Creek residents. Come say hi. Enjoy the porch." Note: service refused to anyone named Brenda due to pending litigation regarding bad vibes. We placed the table strategically. It was on my driveway, private property, but right at the edge where the driveway met the sidewalk. To the uneducated eye, Brenda's, it would look like an encroachment on the public easement. "It's beautiful," Mike said, stepping back to admire our work. "It screams report me." "Let's take our positions," I said. It was 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. The sun was shining. The birds were singing, and I was sitting in my rocking chair behind the privacy screen, watching the monitor of my new security system on my iPad. Mike sat on the bench next to me. "She's moving," I whispered. On the screen, the front door of 405 Maple Drive opened. Brenda stepped out. She was wearing a visor and carrying a watering can, presumably to water the 3 petunias she allowed to live on her porch. She watered one flower. She watered the second. Then, she looked up. Her head snapped toward my house so fast I thought she might get whiplash. She dropped the watering can. It clattered onto the concrete. She didn't even look at it. Her eyes were locked on the sign. "She sees it," Mike narrated. "She's reading. She's squinting." "Wait for the Brenda part," I said. We watched her lips move. She read the top. She smiled sarcastically. Then she got to the bottom. Her posture changed. It went from annoyed neighbor to tactical nuke. She stiffened. Her hands balled into fists. She took a step toward the street, realized she was in her gardening clogs, didn't care, and kept coming. "Here we go," I said, putting down the iPad. "Action stations." We walked out from behind the privacy screen and stood by the lemonade table just as Brenda reached the edge of my driveway. She stopped exactly 1 inch from the property line. She knew where it was. "What?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the sign. "Is this?" "Morning, Brenda," I said, using my best customer service voice. "Thirsty? Oh, wait, sorry, read the fine print." "You cannot run a business in a residential zone," she screamed. Her face was already flushing a deep, blotchy red. "This is an R2 zoned district. Commercial enterprises are strictly prohibited. Do you have a vendor's permit? Do you have a health department rating? Is that unpasteurized citrus?" "It's free, Brenda," Big Mike said, picking up a red cup. "Can't be a business if there's no money changing hands. It's charity. I'm a charity case. I'm thirsty." "It doesn't matter," she yelled. "It is a visual blight. A table on the driveway? It looks like a flea market. It looks like poverty." "I think it looks festive," I said. "And the sign is very informative." She read the sign again. The vein in her forehead began to throb. "Pending litigation? Bad vibes? That is slander. That is libel. You are writing lies about me on a placard visible from the public roadway." "Is it a lie?" I asked innocently. "The vibes are pretty bad, Brenda." She let out a sound that was half scream, half growl. She fumbled in her pocket and pulled out her phone. "I am calling the police," she announced. "I am calling them right now. And I am not just reporting a noise complaint. I am reporting an illegal, unlicensed food stall, harassment, defamation of character, and loitering with intent to distribute." "Intent to distribute lemonade?" Mike asked. "Is that a felony now?" "Go ahead, Brenda," I said, leaning against the table. "Call them. Make sure you tell them it's an emergency. Tell them I'm out of control." "Oh, I will!" She stabbed at her phone screen. "Officer Miller gave me his direct extension. You are done, Jason. You are finished in this town." She put the phone to her ear. She turned away from us. pacing back and forth on the sidewalk like a lawyer in a courtroom drama. Yes, this is Brenda Miller at 405 Maple. I need a unit at 402 immediately. He has set up an illegal storefront. He is mocking me. He has a sign with my name on it. I feel threatened. He's inciting a riot. Mike looked around the empty street. A lone tumbleweed of grass clippings blew by. Hell of a riot, he muttered. Yes, now, he's aggressive. He has a large man with him, a hired thug. Mike pointed at himself. Thug? I'm a licensed contractor with a 5-star rating on Angie's List. She hung up the phone and turned back to us with a triumphant sneer. They're coming. And this time you aren't talking your way out of it. I'm going to have them cite you for every code violation in the book. I'm going to have that table seized as evidence. Okay, I said calmly. Okay? She blinked. That's all you have to say? You should be taking this down. You should be begging for mercy. I'm just going to wait for the police, I said. I like talking to Officer Miller. He seems like a reasonable guy. I walked back to the porch steps and sat down. Mike sat next to me. Brenda stood her ground at the end of the driveway. She wasn't going to let us escape. She stood guard, arms crossed, tapping her foot, glaring at the pitcher of lemonade as if it were a vat of toxic waste. The wait was agonizingly perfect. 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Then we saw it. The familiar cruiser turning the corner, Officer Miller. And this time he wasn't alone. A second cruiser followed him. Brenda had apparently sounded the alarm so effectively that they sent backup. Showtime, I whispered to Mike. I reached into the bag sitting by my feet. I pulled out the manila folder. I held it in my lap. The cruisers pulled up. Officer Miller got out of the first car. He looked at the lemonade table. He looked at the sign. He looked at Brenda. Then he looked at me. His shoulders slumped. Mr. Bennett, Miller said, walking up the driveway. Brenda. Officer! Brenda lunged at him. Look at this! He's selling lemonade without a license, and look at the sign, it's a hate crime! Miller walked over to the sign. He read it. The corner of his mouth twitched. Ma'am, a sign excluding you from free lemonade isn't a hate crime. It's rude, maybe, but it's not illegal. It is harassment, she shrieked. He is targeting me, and look at the structure, a table on the driveway, that violates HOA bylaw 7.3 regarding temporary structures. I don't enforce HOA bylaws, ma'am, Miller said wearily. I enforce the law. Is he selling it? It says complimentary, Miller noted. That means free. It's a trick, Brenda insisted. It's a front. He's using it to lure people in to give them hydration? I offered. Officer, Brenda switched tactics. I want him arrested, right now, for disturbing the peace. He is disturbing my peace intentionally. He is provoking me. I am a tax-paying citizen, and I demand you remove this criminal element from my neighborhood. Miller sighed. Ma'am, I can't arrest a man for giving away lemonade. I can ask him to take the table inside if it's blocking the sidewalk, but... It's not blocking the sidewalk, Mike piped up. I measured. 3 feet of clearance. You see? Brenda yelled. They are mocking the law. If you won't arrest him, I will call your supervisor. I will call the mayor. I know people. I have a clean record and I am a victim here. A clean record. The words hung in the air. I stood up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. This was it. The moment Sal had promised me. Officer Miller? I called out. Miller turned to me. Yes, Mr. Bennett? Can we just put the table away and call it a day? I'm happy to put the table away, I said, walking down the steps. But before you go, there's something you need to see. Since Brenda brought up records. Brenda scoffed. Oh, please. What is he going to show you? His library card? I walked past the lemonade stand. I walked past Brenda, who recoiled as if I were contagious. I stopped in front of Officer Miller and his partner. "My neighbor has been very vocal about the law," I said, keeping my voice loud enough for the neighbors, who were now peeking out of their windows, to hear. "She's very concerned with rules, ordinances, warrants." "Get to the point, Bennett," Miller said. "I hired a private investigator," I said. Brenda froze. Her mouth, which had been open to launch another insult, snapped shut. Her eyes went wide. "I wanted to know why my neighbor was so obsessed with policing everyone else," I continued. "And it turns out projection is a powerful thing." I handed the manila folder to Officer Miller. "What is this?" Miller asked. "That," I said, "is a dossier from the state of Ohio. It contains 3 active bench warrants for one Brenda Kowalski." Brenda made a sound like a deflating tire. "Kowalski? That's not—" "Brenda Kowalski," I said, pointing at her. DOB April 12th, 1973. Also known as Brenda Miller. She never legally changed her name after the divorce. She just started using it. But the fingerprints don't lie, and neither do the court dockets. Miller opened the folder. The other officer, a younger guy, leaned in to look. Silence descended on the street. Even the birds seemed to stop singing to watch. Miller flipped a page. He read. He flipped another page. He looked at the mugshot stapled to the 3rd page. He looked up at Brenda. Brenda was pale. Her tan seemed to drain away, leaving her looking like uncooked dough. That's old," Brenda stammered. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. "That was a misunderstanding. I paid those fines. I sent a check." "According to this," Miller said, his voice changing. The weariness was gone, replaced by the sharp, professional tone of a cop who just found a reason to do his job. "You failed to appear in court 3 times in 2019. "I moved," Brenda squeaked. "I didn't get the notices." "Moving across state lines to avoid a court date makes you a flight risk, ma'am," Miller said. He closed the folder. He looked at his partner. "Run it. Verify the NCIC status." The partner nodded and jogged back to the cruiser. Brenda took a step back. "You can't do this. I am the HOA president. I am the victim here. He's the one with the lemonade stand." "Ma'am," Miller said. "Illegal dumping? Leaving the scene of an accident? These aren't HOA violations. These are crimes." I have to go inside," Brenda said. She turned toward her house. "I need to take my medication. I feel faint." "Ma'am, stop," Miller said. He didn't yell, but the command was absolute. "Do not go inside." Brenda stopped. She looked at her front door. It was 50 feet away. It might as well have been on the moon. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, turning back to me. "You did this. You dug up ancient history to humiliate me." "You called the cops, Brenda," I said softly. "You invited them here. I just gave them some reading material." The partner stuck his head out of the cruiser window. He gave Miller a thumbs up. "Confirmed. Ohio wants extradition. Active warrant, fully extraditable within a 500-mile radius. We're within range." Miller nodded. He reached for his belt. "Brenda Miller," Officer Miller said. "Or Kowalski. I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." The moment was surreal. I watched as the handcuffs came out. The metal glinted in the sunlight. "No!" Brenda shouted. She swatted at Miller's hand. Big mistake. "Ma'am, do not resist," Miller barked. In one smooth motion, he spun her around and pinned her wrists. "Assault!" Brenda screamed. "Police brutality! Help! Neighbors, help!" Mrs. Higgins, the lady with the poodle, was standing on her lawn, 3 houses down. She watched Brenda screaming. Then, Mrs. Higgins took a sip of her coffee and went back inside. "You have the right to remain silent," Miller recited as the cuffs clicked shut. Click, click, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. "I will sue you!" Brenda wailed as they walked her toward the car. "I will sue this entire city. I will have your badges, Jason. I will take your house. I will burn that deck down." "Anything you say can and will be used against you," Miller continued, unbothered. He opened the back door of the cruiser. He guided her in. She had to duck her head to fit the visor inside. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was heavy, profound, and absolutely delicious. Miller walked back over to me. He handed me the folder. "We'll keep a copy of the warrants," he said. "You can have this back." "Thanks, officer." Miller looked at the lemonade stand. He looked at the pitcher. "Is that actually lemonade?" he asked. "Fresh squeezed," I said, "with a hint of mint." Miller looked at his partner, then back at me. "It's a hot day, and we have a lot of paperwork to do before we transport her." "On the house," I said, "for the boys in blue." I poured 2 cups. Miller took one. His partner took the other. Big Mike raised his red cup. "To neighborhood safety." Miller took a long drink. He lowered the cup and wiped his mustache. "That is damn good lemonade, Mr. Bennett." "Try to keep the noise down," Miller added. But there was a twinkle in his eye. "We don't want any more complaints." "I think the complaints are going to drop significantly after today," I said. Miller chuckled. He walked back to his car. I saw Brenda in the back seat. She was still screaming, but the glass was thick. I couldn't hear a thing. She was pounding on the window. I lifted my cup to her. A silent toast. "Cheers, Brenda." The cruisers drove away, taking the noise, the drama, and the HOA president with them. I looked at Big Mike. He was beaming. "Did we just win?" Mike asked. "We didn't just win," I said, taking a sip of the lemonade. It tasted like victory. "We loitered our way to justice." "What now?" Mike asked. I looked at my beautiful, empty street. I looked at my magnificent cedar deck. I looked at the rocking chair waiting for me behind the privacy screen. "Now," I said, "I finish my book.